The Georgia morning air was thick with mist, soft and silver, clinging to rooftops and the edges of windshields like a memory that refused to lift. The streets of Dalton were still waking, yawning open beneath the hush of dawn traffic. And in the humblest of vehicles, a weathered navy blue Camry with a faded bumper sticker that read "Justice is earned, not gifted," sat a woman who had earned it more times than she could count. Judge Maya Ellison didn't like being late. Punctuality to her was more than habit. It was a quiet act of respect, an invisible thread that held the fabric of law and order together. On this particular Thursday, she had risen before the sun, slipped on a modest gray blazer over a navy blouse, and tied her locks into a low, neat bun. Her ceremonial robe, as always, was folded in the back seat next to a slim leather briefcase and a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. She liked to blend in when she wasn't behind the bench. No drivers, no security detail, no custom plates or tinted windows, just her thoughts, and the soft murmur of NPR from the car speakers. The Camry's engine whispered its way down Green Hill Boulevard as Maya sipped her coffee, black no sugar, eyes flicking toward the courthouse clock tower in the distance. Then she noticed it. A black and white patrol cruiser 2 cars back, following just a beat too close. At first, she thought nothing of it, a routine patrol. Coincidence, perhaps? But as she signaled and turned onto Cypress Avenue, the cruiser mirrored her every movement. 1 block, 2. Her grip on the wheel tightened. She checked her speed, legal, signaled again. Perfect. But the cruiser's lights suddenly flashed red and blue, piercing through the early morning gray. She exhaled through her nose, pulled over smoothly next to a gas station, and placed her hands in the universal position of surrender. 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, palms visible. In her side mirror, she saw him. Officer Brian Kessler, young, white, square-jawed, and already moving fast, like anger was preloaded in his stride. He didn't walk, he advanced, one hand resting near his holster, the other clenching a flashlight despite the daylight. Maya's heart rate remained steady, but her mind cataloged every detail with judicial precision. The door swung open before she could roll down the window. "You in a rush or something?" he barked. His tone wasn't curious. It was accusatory, like a trap already halfway sprung. Maya kept her voice level. "Good morning, officer. May I ask, license and registration?" he snapped. Cutting her off, his hand twitched toward his belt again. Maya began narrating her actions slowly, deliberately. "I'm reaching into my purse for my wallet now." Her voice was calm, steady, and professional, but calmness seemed to enrage him further. "Don't move so slow." "You think you're funny?" He leaned closer. She caught a whiff of stale coffee and something sharper, impatience or maybe power unchecked. "I'm not trying to be funny," she said, lifting her wallet slightly. "Here's my—" She didn't get to finish. The car door flew open. Kessler yanked it with such force that Maya instinctively flinched. Before she could stand or step out, he pulled her by the arm and barked, "Out, now." She complied, not because she had to, but because she knew how quickly things escalated when you didn't. As her feet touched the pavement, it happened. The slap. A flat, sharp, humiliating crack that rang louder than the traffic idling nearby. Her head whipped to the side. A murmur rippled through the gas station crowd. Someone gasped. A coffee cup hit the pavement. Maya tasted blood. Just a hint. Her blazer had slipped off one shoulder. The sky hadn't changed, but it felt like something had shifted irreversibly. Officer Kessler stood in front of her, chest heaving, breathing like a man who'd just won something. But Maya didn't crumble. She didn't scream. She straightened her spine, turned her face slowly back toward him, and said low and unwavering, "You just assaulted a sitting judge." She didn't need to shout. The silence did it for her. And in that silence, the entire world started to tilt. The air around the gas station thickened, not with weather, but with disbelief. The slap had barely faded from the air when people began to stir. A woman near Pump 6 dropped her croissant. A man with a diesel truck stood frozen mid-pour, his eyes locked on the unfolding scene. But it was silence, the awful, echoing pause after Maya Ellison's calm declaration that shifted the atmosphere entirely. You just assaulted a sitting judge. Officer Kessler blinked. For a second, the words didn't compute. Then came the scoff. Yeah, right. He said it like it was a joke. Her words were a challenge to his authority rather than a truth too large to grasp. Maya didn't move. She didn't raise her voice or point. Instead, with the same control she used when handing down verdicts, she reached into the inside pocket of her blazer, slow, visible, deliberate, and withdrew a gold badge encased in leather. It caught the morning sun like a blade unsheathed. The seal of the Georgia State Supreme Court gleamed against the tension. It was like watching a wave crash in slow motion. First, Kessler's face drained of color, as though he'd been struck this time. His shoulders stiffened, and for a second, just a flicker, he looked like he might draw his weapon. But then his eyes flicked to the growing crowd, the rows of phones pointed directly at him like digital witnesses. One teen in a gray hoodie stood defiantly across the lot, still recording. Kessler snapped at him. Put that away. His voice cracked. The teen didn't flinch. Neither did anyone else. Maya stood there, cheeks swelling, blazer rumpled, badge shining. And in her stillness, there was power. The kind of power that didn't shout. It didn't need to. A voice rose from the chief station door. That's Judge Ellison. An older man, mid-50s, oil-stained overalls, kind eyes, stepped forward, recognition dawning. Frankie Dawson, local mechanic, occasional courthouse witness. You messed up bad, son, he called, shaking his head at Kessler. Real bad. Kessler's fingers hovered near his radio now. His breaths were shallow. He looked left, then right, cornered not by bullets, but by truth. And then, finally, he pressed the button. Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I need immediate backup. Possible disturbance, corner of Cypress and Green Hill. He didn't mention that he had caused the disturbance. Maya crossed her arms gently over her chest, keeping the badge in view. Her voice was steady, but her jaw throbbed now, a deep, aching heat radiating from where his hand had met her skin. You know who I am, she said, and you know what comes next. Kessler shook his head slowly. You don't look like a judge. The words hung in the air like ash. Heavy, ugly, real. Maya didn't blink, but the crowd did. Audible murmurs surged forward. A woman holding a toddler stepped forward, her voice sharp. And what does a judge look like to you? Kessler didn't answer. His face flushed crimson, pacing in a tight circle, muttering to himself. Within minutes, 2 squad cars pulled up. Officers stepped out, one a Latino man, one white woman. They moved with cautious urgency, taking in the scene, a woman with a badge and a bleeding lip, a gathering crowd bristling with cell phones, their fellow officer standing frozen, sweat glistening at his temples. Maya turned to them without raising her voice. This officer assaulted me during an unlawful traffic stop. You are now witnesses to that fact. My name is Judge Maya Ellison, Georgia Supreme Court. For a moment, the Latino officer stared at her, processing, blinking, tightening his jaw. The woman beside him stiffened. Her eyes darted to Kessler, then back to the badge. You serious? She asked. Maya didn't reply. She simply held the badge higher. More sirens approached in the distance. And then the manager of the gas station came running out, pointing to the corner of the building. We got cameras, he yelled. 3 angles, it's all on tape. That was when Kessler's shoulders slumped, like the weight of every reckless decision had finally settled on his back. He didn't speak. He didn't apologize. He just looked away, mouth working silently. while the world recorded everything. Officer Brian Kessler stood still, but the damage kept moving, like a dropped stone, spreading ripples wider and wider across a once quiet pond. By the time Lieutenant Alan Pierce pulled into the gas station parking lot in an unmarked black SUV, the scene had grown into something far larger than a simple traffic stop. Cameras were everywhere. Phones, security systems, dashboard cams from the squad cars. The crowd now numbered more than 24, huddled in disbelief and anger, forming a loose circle of justice made from silence and screens. Lieutenant Pierce stepped out of his vehicle with slow, deliberate movements. He was a tall man, grizzled, methodical, the kind of leader who chose every word like it could end a riot or start one. As he walked forward, removing his sunglasses, he spotted Maya immediately. The bruising had bloomed, faint red deepening into plum along her left cheek. Her expression was calm, yes, but her eyes carried weight. Recognition flashed in Pierce's face. He froze mid-step, lips parting slightly. "Judge Ellison," he said, lowering his voice to something close to reverence. "Are you all right, ma'am?" Maya didn't nod, didn't offer pleasantries. She turned her head just enough for him to see the full handprint swelling on her cheek. The gasps didn't come from the crowd this time. They came from the officers, from Pierce himself, whose jaw clenched so tightly his temple twitched. The silence was so thick even the traffic noise faded. Then he turned, slowly, heavily, toward Kessler. "What happened here, officer?" I didn't know who she was," Kessler muttered. The sentence fell flat, limp, like a broken excuse hanging in midair. Pierce stepped forward, stopping just short of Kessler's boots. "So hitting her would have been fine if Schwerent did a judge." Kessler tried to speak again, some combination of stammer and protest, but nothing coherent made it out. Maya didn't let the silence fester. She spoke clearly, letting her words cut clean. "My identity doesn't excuse what he did. It just makes it impossible for him to pretend it didn't happen." The crowd stirred. The woman with the toddler pressed her hand to her chest. The teen in the gray hoodie whispered, "She's right," to no one in particular. Pierce took it all in. The cameras, the witnesses, the security manager now holding a USB drive in one hand and pointing to the building with the other. "3 angles, all recorded," the man said again, quieter this time. Kessler looked down, no longer a man with power, just a man with consequences closing in. "Officer Kessler," Pierce said, voice hard but controlled, "hand over your badge and weapon. Right now." Kessler blinked. "Lieutenant, you can't be serious. You assaulted a Supreme Court judge. You're lucky this doesn't end with cuffs." Kessler's hands trembled as he unclipped his badge. He hesitated before handing over his firearm, like the weight of it had just become too much. Maya didn't look triumphant. There was no gloating in her expression, only disappointment. The quiet kind that hits deeper than anger ever could. The officer who had first arrived on the scene, Saunders, her nameplate read, stepped in now, speaking softly. "Ma'am, EMS is on the way. Are you in pain?" Maya nodded once. "Yes," she said. "He struck me across the face." The words weren't meant to dramatize. They were just facts. Facts that now live in recordings, in bruises, in the backs of every throat present. Pierce turned back to her. "Ma'am, I am deeply sorry. This will be handled properly." Maya's gaze didn't waver. "See that it is." Her voice cracked, just once, on the last word, but only for a moment. And just then, the radios on several officers' belts crackled. "Lieutenant, be advised, news vans en route, local and regional." Across the lot, the manager confirmed, "Already got 2 reporters asking for footage." The storm was no longer coming. It had arrived. And Judge Maya Ellison, standing bruised but unbroken in the parking lot of a gas station in Dalton, Georgia, had just become the center of a national reckoning. 2 weeks later, the courtroom in Fulton County was standing room only. Media trucks idled along the curb like silent witnesses. Protest signs leaned against polished marble columns. Inside, the air pulsed, not with excitement, but with that rare, sacred demand for something the justice system often promised, but rarely delivered: accountability. Judge Maya Ellison was not on the bench today. She sat on the witness stand, her robe left at home, her composure as steady as ever. Two attorneys from the Georgia Judicial Review Board sat beside her, but they barely spoke. Maya didn't need defense. She was the defense. Across from her sat Officer Brian Kessler, his crisp uniform replaced by a poorly fitted gray suit, collar askew. His eyes rarely lifted. At his side, his attorney, a sharp-featured woman named Marla Whitby, imported from a high-profile firm in Dallas, flicked through notes with a pace that betrayed desperation. Presiding over the case was Judge Ruth Dillard, a no-nonsense jurist from neighboring Cobb County, known for her intolerance of theatrics and her absolute loyalty to the law. When she entered the courtroom, even the gallery exhaled in silence. "The People versus Officer Brian Kessler," she called. "Charges: battery, abuse of authority, and violation of civil rights under color of law." The prosecution opened with no flair, just facts. Video from 3 angles. Maya is being pulled from her car. The slap. The badge was revealed too late. The bruised cheek. The refusal to apologize. Then they called Maya. She rose slowly, walking to the stand not as a symbol, not as a spectacle, but as a woman determined not to let her silence be mistaken for peace. She placed her hand on the Bible, took the oath, and sat. "Describe what happened," the prosecutor asked gently. Maya's voice was low but clear. "I was pulled over without cause. I complied with every instruction. I narrated my movements. I did not raise my voice. I did not resist. And yet, I was treated as less than human because of an assumption made the moment he saw me." The room held its breath. "And that assumption?" the prosecutor asked. Maya didn't flinch. "That I didn't belong. That I was dangerous. That I was disposable." A woman in the back wiped her eyes. A man clenched his jaw. Kessler never looked up. Maya continued, her voice unwavering. "The badge in my jacket shouldn't be the reason anyone regrets mistreating me. My existence should have been enough." When she stepped down from the stand, the silence was so deep it rang like glass. Then came the defense. Marla Whitby rose with the polished confidence of someone used to bending narratives. "Officer Kessler feared for his safety," she said. "It was early. He didn't know who he was dealing with. He thought it could escalate. Objection!" the prosecutor snapped. "Speculation." "Sustained," Judge Dillard said, sharp as a gavel strike. "Stick to facts, Miss Whitby." But the facts were not on their side, not today. Too many witnesses, too many angles, too many seconds of silence caught on tape that said everything words could not. Closing arguments came swiftly. The prosecutor said little. "The law exists to protect, not to harm, and when we allow it to be twisted into a weapon, especially by those sworn to uphold it, we betray more than a single citizen. We betray the very idea of justice." Judge Dillard took just 15 minutes. "This court finds Officer Brian Kessler guilty on all counts." Kessler sank into his seat. Maya didn't cry. She didn't nod. She didn't move. Not out of coldness, but because she knew. This wasn't the end. It was only the truth, finally spoken out loud. As Maya exited the courtroom into the blinding Georgia sun, cameras swarmed. She paused, then stepped to the podium. Not for herself, but for those who never got the chance. "My name is Maya Ellison," she said clearly, "and what happened to me happens to too many people who don't have a title or a badge to protect them. Justice is not a privilege. It's not earned by rank or education. It is a right. And until that right is guaranteed to everyone, none of us are truly safe." Then she turned and walked away quietly, without drama. And yet, the nation heard her louder than ever. The world moved on, but not quite the same. In the days following the verdict, Judge Maya Ellison received more mail than she had in her entire judicial career. Letters came from everywhere. Retired postal workers, law students, mothers of sons who never made it home from routine stops. Some were angry, some tearful. Most were simply raw. But Maya didn't appear on morning shows. She turned down every primetime interview. No memoir deal, no press tour. She didn't want to be a headline. She just wanted people to remember why this mattered. Instead of public praise, she returned to her modest brick home in East Atlanta, resumed her duties quietly, and kept her same battered Camry. When asked why she hadn't traded it in, she smiled faintly. That car told the truth. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Maya stepped out onto her porch with a mug of chamomile tea and a heavy heart. The Georgia sky stretched wide above her, soft and gold in the late daylight. A breeze stirred the oak leaves overhead. And across the street, something was happening. A small candlelight vigil had formed. No bullhorns, no shouting, just people, neighbors, students, veterans, teachers, holding candles and cardboard signs with handwritten words. We stand with Maya. Dignity has no uniform. She spoke so we could be heard. From the group, a teenager stepped forward. Talia Brooks, the same young girl from the gas station weeks ago. She walked slowly across the street, Otena, candle in hand, stopping just short of the porch. Judge Ellison, she said, voice trembling, I just wanted to say, you changed how I see myself. You made me believe I can matter too. Maya stood, her throat tightened. She stepped down onto the walkway, placing a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. You already matter. Always have. Talia smiled through her tears and ran back to join the crowd. That night, Maya sat on her porch until the last candle dimmed. She didn't say much, but inside her something shifted, not relief, not pride, but something deeper, readiness. She hadn't chosen to be the symbol of anything, but she wouldn't run from it either. And if her voice, calm, steady, scarred, could open a door for someone else, then she'd speak again, and again, and again. Weeks later, Maya was invited to speak at a private ceremony at the Georgia State Capitol, honoring public servants who had shown courage under pressure. She almost declined. But on the day of the event, as she stood on the Capitol steps, the sun rising behind her like a quiet spotlight, Maya knew this wasn't about celebration. It was about accountability. She adjusted the mic, took a breath. I've been a judge for many years, and one thing I know for certain is this. Justice doesn't live in marble halls. It lives in the small choices we make when no one is filming, when no one is clapping. Her eyes scanned the modest crowd, a janitor in uniform, a group of high schoolers, a nurse holding her toddler. I didn't survive that morning because of my badge. I survived because I refused to let someone else define my worth. She leaned slightly forward. And every one of you has that same choice. Every day. Choose to stand, even when it's easier to sit. Because when you stand, you permit others to rise too. The applause came slowly but strongly, not choreographed, not polite, earned. And Maya, Judge Maya Ellison, stepped away from the microphone not as a hero, but as a reminder. The lesson dignity should not be conditional. Respect should not require credentials. And justice should never be reserved for those with titles, uniforms, or nameplates. Judge Maya Ellison did not fight back with fists or fury. She stood in silence, with truth and unwavering presence, and reminded a nation that the most powerful resistance is often the quiet refusal to be dehumanized. This story isn't just about a corrupt officer or a wrong judge. It's about all the unseen people who are told, subtly or violently, that they don't belong. And it's about what happens when one of them finally says, enough.